Welcome to the Parsha Perspective. Each week, we will delve deep in a weekly Torah portion to find a practical and insightful way to enhance your daily life. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Rabbi Shalom Yemini, and each week we will look into the weekly Torah portion to find practical and insightful ways to enhance your daily life. This week's Parsha Perspective is dedicated in honor of the Lubavitch Rebbe and the work of Chabad Lubavitch worldwide. This week's Parsha Perspective is in honor of the Refuah Shlema, the complete and speedy recovery of Rav Amitai ben Shoshanna, Shaul ben Brita, and Lior Gabai ben Michael. This week's Parsha Perspective is in loving memory of Leah Mincha Bas Yaakov Yosef, Edward ben Ephraim, Shlomo ben Edward, and Yerachmiel Daniel ben Gedalia. May their souls be uplifted and may the memories be a blessing. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Beshalach, into the unexpected. Our Parsha begins with Paro regretting his decision to release and free the Jewish nation from slavery. He decides to chase after them and finish his Jewish problem once and for all. When the Jewish nation was approaching the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, they noticed the Egyptian army quickly approaching from behind them, trapping them against the water. The Jewish nation panicked, and they cried out to Moshe, "Why have you taken us out of Egypt?" But Moshe Rabbeinu responded with very powerful words. He says, "Do not be afraid and stand firm and see this salvation that God will do for you today. God is going to fight on your behalf, and you just need to remain silent." God told Moshe to stretch his stick over the Yam Suf, over the Sea of Reeds, and split it for the Jewish nation. Moshe did as God instructed, and a strong wind came from the east and split the Yam Suf, split the Sea of Reeds, the water, in half, creating a dry path for the people, for the Jewish nation to pass through. Just as the Jewish people finished crossing the sea, the waters came crashing down on Paro and his chasing armies. Moshe Rabbeinu and his sister Miriam Hanaviah, Miriam the prophetess, led the Jewish people in song and dance as the water spat out the dead Egyptians. They thanked and praised God for the incredible and awesome miracle that just occurred. However, a question comes to mind. The Parsha begins with why God led the Jewish people on an indirect route to Israel. The Torah writes that God did not lead them by the way of the Philistines, the Pelishtim, even though it was nearer, for God said, "Perhaps the people will have a change of heart, and when they will see war, they will change their heart and return to Egypt." But the Jewish nation still had a warlike, frightening experience. When they approached the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, they looked behind them and saw the Egyptian chariots flying and coming to chase them, to kill them, and they cried out to Moshe that they were willing to return to Egypt. So why did God lead them in a roundabout way if it did not prevent them from wanting to return to Egypt? What was the reason that God didn't just lead them on a direct route to the Promised Land? The Bakar Shar, Rav Yosef ben Yitzchak, a leading commentary from the 12th century, gives a very interesting answer. He writes that the most direct route to Israel was through the land of the Philistines. And since they wouldn't let the Jewish people pass through their land, through their country, they might go to battle with the Pelishtim. Hence, God led the Jewish nation on a roundabout way to circumvent the war that could potentially come from the Pelishtim, from the Philistines. The Bakar Shar explains that had God led the Jewish people near or through the lands of the Pelishtim, the Philistines, they would have had twice the fear and twice the anxiety, since the Pelishtim would have also joined the Egyptians as they prepared to attack and destroy the Jewish nation. And therefore God, in His great mercy, directed the Jewish nation far away from the land of the Pelishtim, the land of the Philistines, to prevent the Jewish people from experiencing more suffering, distress, and grief. However, the Rabbeinu Hananel gives a deeper and more profound explanation. He writes that God led the Jewish people in a roundabout way directly to the Sea of Reeds to experience His power, His strength, and His love. So it is clear to the world whom God wants to represent Him and exemplify His holiness on this earth. God directed the Jewish people to the Sea of Reeds to demonstrate that we are His chosen people. The Rabbeinu Hananel explains that the Jewish people first had to learn what they were chosen for before they can enter the Promised Land, the land of Israel. And although it was said countless of times during their slavery, not everyone understood, not everyone internalized why they were being redeemed. So God made it evident to all that we, the Jewish nation, were created to manifest God's desires and serve Him with our whole heart. They were sent to the Sea of Reeds to experience and recognize how God elevated them above all others to be His representatives in this world, to realize His love for us and see the singular and unique purpose of the Jewish people's creation. The seemingly indirect route to the Sea of Reeds was in fact the most straightforward path to God. In our daily life, it is imperative not to be discouraged as we attempt to define the meaning of our existence. Even as we hit multiple bumps in this journey called life, we must not lose our energy or spirit. The whole purpose of a challenge is to build our character and strength to find our direction, so we can begin the journey to where we need to be, even though that is not where we want to go. There is a powerful quote about what it means to be a Jew by Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. Judaism constantly asks us to exercise our human freedom. To be a Jew is not to go with the flow, not to be like everyone else, not to follow in the path of least resistance. To the contrary, to be a Jew is to have the courage to live in the way that is not the way of everybody, to live in God's will and be one of His ambassadors to the world. Have a great weekend and good Shabbos. Thank you for tuning in to the Parsha Perspective. Check out our website, theparshaperspective.com. Send thoughts and comments to theparshaperspective@gmail.com. Till next time, thanks for listening.